The discussion began something like this. I'm voting Republican. I don't care what the hell anybody says. And they did that without providing any rationale. The discussion started evolving into an argument. It wasn't even a debate, so to speak. It was moving towards a full blown argument with hostility. I kind of stepped in the discussion and asked each of them if they had a pen and paper on them and if it was handy. This was a maintenance team, and they actually did. And I told them I was going to ask a question, and I wanted them not to discuss it. Rather, I wanted them to take a minute to list the top three issues they thought the government needed to address that wasn't being dealt with by the state or local government. Now, this is again, a deep red state. They agreed to participate. I told them I was working sort of a process. There were three of them in the discussion plus myself, and I asked them in no particular order to list the number one thing that they wrote down. And it wasn't really a surprise here. The number one issue they felt needed to be addressed was the cost of living. They cited everything from gas prices to buying kids' clothes. So that would include food and, or I don't know, a whole bunch of other things. The second thing on the list was finding a job that pays the living wage. And actually, the conversation through sort of a collaboration discussion versus an argument or debate sort of united the cost of living with low wage and used one word to define that unity of those two issues, and they termed it affordability. Then it began to become a little more diverse in the third thing. It ranged from integration to poor school ratings. So I asked them how important was affordability in terms of their daily life. Was rating it sort of like 1, not having much impact at all, to 5, driving them crazy. They agreed and unanimously that unaffordability was the major point for them. So their response to that was 5. It was important to them. It was likely to happen, is happening, and it was important to them. I then asked them if affordability was forcing them to alter their life in a negative way. That also got a unanimous 5 rating. Yes, it was. So my next question was whether they felt our government should be doing something about it, or should they handle the problem amongst themselves. We're by this time we're talking in general conversation. They all agreed they didn't have whatever authority they needed to have to change affordability. Then I asked what was their frustration level with the government not doing anything, and that was very high. I mean, that was also a 5, and a 1 to 5 scale. We then got to the discussion of whether they felt they could have any impact on affordability, and the sad point is they felt they had absolutely no control over the affordability issue other than choosing between food or medicine or food and clothing or something that through as a customer, as a consumer. So I basically summed up what we arrived at during what was effectively kind of a team building session. It didn't initially turn out this, or start out that way, but it ended that way. We spent a few minutes more talking about what they felt was causing the problem, and that really boiled down to Donald Trump and his lies. They felt like he was lying, and they voted for him, or many of them did. Trump and his lies were a problem. They clearly understood the impact Trump's tariffs had on the country. And they've seen his array of mistakes. And they see the Republican Party failing to act and realize they are under control of a group of oligarchs, and said that it's a battle they've been fighting their whole working life as Republicans and or Democrats or whatever their affiliation was. And that was that battle of boss versus employees. So this isn't unfamiliar to them. Finally, I was getting closer to the point of my questioning. Why do you think the Democrats and the Republicans don't just get together, sit down, and control Trump? And one of them kind of hesitantly spoke up and said they don't trust each other. And I asked, why is it that they don't trust each other? And they all agreed they just don't sit down and talk to each other. And that the Speaker of the House actually closed down Congress to keep them from getting together face to face and discussing the issues. And that turns out to be an interpersonal communication failure. Not just poor interpersonal communication skills as leaders, but the rejection of interpersonal communication totally as a means for resolving issues. They don't talk to each other. And that's fairly obvious if you watch a hearing. That group of men in that 45-minute discussion realized the two things they had in common that was hurting them, and they turned it into one thing, affordability, and it was hurting them and their families. And they felt they had no control over correcting the affordability problem. And I had one last statement for them, and then I had to leave. And I told them to think about the one thing they each had equally that could impact the problem. They kind of looked at me inquisitively, and I told them, your vote. I expressed my hope that they would encourage others to stop thinking red and blue and actually go out and use that very valuable vote that everyone has, regardless of their background, for someone who would work to change that pain point of affordability. And I walked back towards my apartment, and I had renewed confidence. And I was convinced when people can get together face to face and have the communication skills to collaborate versus argue and fight, they can find common ground. This group did. The lack of interpersonal communication skills is the biggest barrier to our Congress being an effective Congress. Technology in the form of social media gives the crutch to help them avoid sitting down face to face through collaboration, not compromise, which is lose-lose. Collaboration is win-win, and resolve issues of affordability. just that one area would just help so many people in America. I mean, they wouldn't have to do much more than that, this Congress. So I asked the four men if they ever had that type of discussion before. They said no, but said they appreciated it and they enjoyed it. And so did I. These men reinforced my thinking that everyone should have the chance to learn more about interpersonal communication, what it really means, what it's all about. When they apply these skills, they found what they have in common. At this income level, we all are suffering and sacrificing. The sad thing is AI won't develop fast enough to be there as we grow older, to help the elderly as we live longer. Something I'm realizing as I approach 80 years old in July. And I'm about to have a full hip replacement, my second one, by the way, in August. It just told me we can do this if we have the desire, the inclination, but we also have to have the training, the development to really understand what can be done when people get together person to person, not across social media, not text messaging, not emailing, not trying to reach people through posts and replies and things, but actually sit down in a small group. That whole conversation probably lasted less than 20 minutes. But a couple of things were pretty interesting. One, these people that were actually a mixture of Republicans and Democrats actually found something they had in common. And they were talking about it while they were walking back to work. And that's where I'm coming from this Substack that I'm doing on how to learn how to communicate more effectively. We talk about it when we talk about helping leaders improve leadership and leadership development and programs that are associated with that. The problem is we don't take the time to explain that. We explain the reaction that comes from not having that, the result, poor employee engagement, turnover, lack of performance. All of those things are basic things I dealt with as a leader for years and years and years. There's nothing new. I mean, every leader who's working in an organization, every executive understands those problems are going on. The problem is they don't understand how and why and what they can do to correct those. And that's where you've got to go a little deeper than just saying, okay, we're going to have a team building session, or we're going to have an activity, or I'm going to spend a couple of hours with you. This is the kind of stuff it takes time and commitment and an organizational sense of the value of a community of people who have transparent and open communication and know how to sustain that and apply it in a way that it works towards the delivery of those leadership skills. But you need to understand it first. You need to take some time to understand it. So if I were working with these people, if I were going to continue on, I wouldn't want them just walking away and, feeling like they agree on affordability. I would want them to understand more about what they need to do together as a group to commit to doing something to correct that affordability problem, that they do have the power to correct it. They just have to learn how to use it and exercise it. That requires a little more touch and a little more ongoing development. That's why in my course, it's not a short course, it's a 17-week program that I put leaders through, where we do some education. They go out into their work environment or wherever they need to go to get the experience about how to discover, for example, how to actually read nonverbal behavior, not just hear it and understand what is involved with it, but to actually now go practice that in a way where you can actually read the nonverbal behaviors. Because they are the most important part of your communication when you're trying to get somebody to understand what you are telling them. They'll put 90% of their understanding on your nonverbal communication. So if you leave a sticky note or if you send a text message with directions, you cut out about 90% of the meaning of that message. So you're leaving that in the hands of that person. And I explain why and what about that person there is about how they receive that message when they get a text message versus you coming in the office, sitting down, going over what you want them to do, or connecting with them at least at a minimum, like I'm doing with you here on Substack in a video format. But even that, we're cutting out a large portion of the nonverbal of the feedback, because in this particular situation, there is no feedback. And so I don't know whether you're hearing, understanding, and deciding that what I'm telling you is important or not. But I can tell you, if I'm not getting there, if I'm not getting through to you, then it's a shame, because you're losing a lot of your potential to influence and help and make change happen that is right for you, your family, and other people that you live with in your small community on an ongoing basis. So I just thought I would mention those kinds of things to you, and hopefully tell you this little story. It was a very interesting experience to me. It was encouraging to me, because there's a lot of variance. There's a pretty big age difference there. There was definitely an educational difference. Like I said, the only common thing they had in common was they were all males. And so don't think you have, don't accept the idea that you don't have any control over this. You do have control over it, and I want you to be able to go out and effectively do this. This is why I'm offering a basic primer course on what happens when two people talk to each other. There's a lot involved in that we just take for granted. I'd be glad to talk to you on your podcast or talk to you one-on-one. You can reach me on my website, victorlvogel.com. You got to put www in front of it. And there's a place on there where you can contact me and say, hey, I'd like to spend some time with you. You can actually schedule that time right there. You know, I have the days that I'm available, and I don't mind sitting back and talking with you. I mean, that's what I now have to offer in my latter years. With all of the experience I've had, the vast amount of research and education I've undergone in those 50 years, I have a lot I can help you understand at all levels of an organization. But you have to kind of be willing to talk. And I don't do these things in I'm going to sit down across the desk and teach you format. It's casual, kind of like we're doing right here. I'm not a podcaster. I'm not trying to sell you anything. I'm not trying to build thousands of likes. I don't even know what I would do with thousands of likes. I mean, likes don't mean much to me because I don't know the person. I can't say anything about you. So I don't care too much whether you like what I'm in. But if you're really interested, the people I can help are the people who contact me and say, let's talk. And I go, okay, let's talk. Sometimes that talks 15 minutes or 10 minutes. And sometimes it's 2 hours. I've had a few that have gone into a couple of hours. Got so exciting and so engaged in the conversation, that they were caught up in it. And it's like they wanted to get as much out of me on one sitting as they could possibly get. And 2 hours is about that amount of time. Okay, I'm going to let you go. I hope you have a good day. You can make a difference here. That vote is an equalizing factor, even as much as they're trying to change it. I don't know what's going to happen if every redistricting they do actually votes Democrat. Does the person in charge of that gerrymandering or that district, do they just say, okay, the committee is deciding to override the vote and say, 80% of people voted for Democrats, but we're going to go ahead and put the Republican in anyway? Is that how that works? If that's how that works, no, the electoral system is all messed up bad. So it's going to be interesting to me because as a gerrymander, all those things, if I guess in the general election, as far as I know, you can vote Democrat or Republican or independent if you want to. You don't have to vote your party that you're registered with. So if they gerrymander all these districts and they vote Democrat anyway, I don't know. That would tell me that you're supposed to take that district and say, hey, it went to the Democrat. We'll see. Have a good day. I'm looking forward to getting another segment here on Substack, and we're talking about receiver sender interaction, and I've got that's coming out soon. You want to look for that. Subscribe here, and so you'll know when that thing comes out. And always feel free to call me and contact me and discuss that, because it's not stuff that usually happens like a class. It's not like a university class where you go in and you learn this. And sometimes you have to meet with a professor and really talk it through for it to seed in that brain back there where your brain is clicking out. So look forward to that next Substack on that one coming up here probably in the next day or two, I hope. And we'll just kind of walk through that concept of understanding that whole system that's going on when you're communicating between two people. Then you can think about that if you want to complicate it a little more in terms of how that is with the team, how that is with the major audience, how that might be between governments. It just exponentially gets more complicated the bigger it gets. So have a good one. Thanks for watching this. I appreciate it so very much. I hope it is helpful to you. It's intended to be helpful. And you have a great day. And don't forget, you can make a difference. You can make a difference.